All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing the series between Veeq7 and Neblime. My co-author here, Veeq7, leads the series 1-0. We'll see if this is a best of 3, a clean sweep, how we do it. Let's see what happens. Now, Neblime has been sticking it out as Terran, and Veeq has been playing as Random. And now, he has rolled Terran. So, here we go. Terran versus Terran, buckle up. Expect really long-ass games where everybody builds a million phalanxes and diadems. No, I'm just joking. It's not really quite like that in Cosmonarchy. Or maybe it is. I mean, we are playing on a very new patch, a very new set of updates. It's a great opportunity to learn, honestly. It's a great opportunity to get familiar with the project if you've not been familiar with it hitherto. Obviously, it's not on everybody's radar exactly. We will have a stockade opener for both of our players, as you can see here, with Veeq's in the top right over there. Veeq stockade is going to be by the ramp. I'll be interested in noting the expansion timings, and we'll have to see which one of our players decides to go more towards taking a lot of gas and tech units and stuff. I actually recently played some games against Newt, who is a player that had managed to qualify from the Gauntlet stage into the group stage of the last Ascension tournament we ran. And so that was pretty exciting to see him in action. Neblime talking about playing versus Random. It's an interesting point, right? Because he is talking about how you might want to go for double stockade fairly fast if you're fighting against Zerg. But if you are going to not know, and it's something that Neblime feels like, it's not very fair. I'm interested in that because, I do think Random confers an advantage. What I think maybe Neblime fails to account for in his analysis, or maybe he's just, he's typing in the middle of playing a game, so I'm not going to pretend he's like using all of his faculties for this particular purpose, but you do have to know how to play 3 races, you know what I mean? And I feel like in Cosmonarchy, cheeses are not as significant. At least we hope to have designed a game where the cheesing is not the significant factor here. So we'll see if that's true. We do have a Hurakan first, which is hilarious. Ahmed waddling after the Mavericks after they have done their stim. So he's done a little bit of damage. He has caused 15 damage plus all of the attacks. So there is something to be said for that, but I don't know if it was worth 75 minerals. This is a little cheeky. We have a very greedy opener here. So quarries have been added to tier 1 again. And as you can see, they do cost a lot of Vespene. So Veeq has decided to harvest just enough Vespene for that. That was scouted by Neblime, but there's no way in hell he's expecting the treasury follow-up. Now, at the same time, Neblime feels pretty safe. He's going to go ahead and drop the ministry because he knows his opponent is going for a bit more of a greedy opener. And so at the very least, once that ministry is completed, they will have the same worker production rate. But Veeq going for a much more greedy build this time around, so that's very interesting. Going to go ahead and migrate his anchor. Yes, they do lift off in Cosmonarchy. Yes, it is very epic. And the new model is great also by Darkened Fantasies, a longtime project contributor. The Quarry, the model is by Solstice, a more shorter time project contributor, but he's been around a hot minute now. I think this will be his second year of joining the project as far as developing stuff is concerned. We have a 12 o'clock bound Mason heading over there from Neblime. We'll see where that goes. And we have a second stockade being added on. So finally we are going to see some additional production coming out of Monsieur Neblime, the man from the land down under. He's going to add his quarry. So actually, he's actually going to be ahead in worker production capabilities here because he did go for a ministry. So not to be outdone, Veeq may have stretched ahead in terms of the overall worker count for now, but that will not be something that will be true for very long. Another change that we added recently, Veeq achieved extending the control groups over to, it's a new option you can enable in your config, and it is pretty effective at providing you with more tools. So you can now add units to the control groups on R, T, F, G, V, and B. But you need to be using grid hotkeys for it. So if you're one of those mnemonic players, yeah, I'm afraid that's not going to work out too well for you. I think at this point we can probably enable grid as the default, which is pretty exciting because something I've long thought is that grid is just superior. It just requires a little bit of getting used to. It's not fully customizable, unfortunately. That will require a pretty heavy amount of... I guess you could say it will require a lot of... dev time for a feature that I'm sure some people will be happy with and happy to enjoy. But it's definitely... This is really funny. Oh, Bird War. I think that when you're considering it overall, it's like you know, something to keep track of, keep in mind is like that kind of dev time unfortunately gobbles up a lot of valuable resources when we're also building a launcher and making maps and doing all sorts of other things. But eventually it will come. It definitely will show up. So just keep your eyes peeled on that. Now, interestingly enough, Veeq made his watchdog at home and then sent it out. That does give him a little bit of a macro advantage, more so than he already has, as he's still up by 5 workers. And Neblime actually stretching ahead in the worker production only briefly in terms of like just production, not actual count. But then this treasury made a quarry, so now they're back to dead even. And at this point, I think Neblime is actually going to need to get some successful harassment done if he wants to climb back into the game in terms of economy. But in Cosmonarchy, there's a little bit more to it than just that. I was talking about how I think that Cosmonarchy is a little bit more cheese-proof than stock StarCraft, and that's because the pace of the game is a bit slower in the early stages of the game. It does give you time to scout and figure out details, but it also, you know, there's just more compositional variety you can have. Here we have Veeq going for triple Palladium, a very expensive move here, as he's going to go ahead and add a vestry to his stockade as well. So he has been able to get a pretty good full scout off, and he has seen, you know, double Fulcrum, 1 Palladium, but at this point he will have the production advantage. And again, he's still ahead by 5 workers. As long as his Mason count remains consistent, I feel like he'll be in a pretty good spot for that. So we'll see what these players end up doing. Phalanxes are an interesting unit because you can try to move out with them, but when you have cliff advantage factoring in, like, it's really hard to bust them, right? So, you know, you will kind of need some extra details there with, you know, maybe some sort of drop or some sort of fast-moving unit. Now, this is a little awkward. The Vulture coming in here just to see what's going on, but there's Clerics, and, okay, now the Phalanx is here. He kind of, like, drives aside. There is a second Palladium now operational. We've got Madrigals and Phalanxes coming out, another Treasury coming. So Veeq going for tempo. He kind of conceptualizes Treasury as, like, a tempo play for the Terran arsenal, and I agree with him. Like, it's pretty clear that it gives you a little bit more tempo on the expansion. Now we have the Watchdog outrunning the Madrigal Bullet, which is really funny. We love to see that. Actually, I was also thinking I'll spitball this while we're waiting for the action to unfold as Neblime is massing outside the doorstep. Something that I've been thinking about for the Madrigal is I kind of want to give it a homing missile instead and have it only target air. And the reason being is that I feel like that would give it like some splash, you know, give it some different options. Look at this. The cliff advantage here is not going to be very effective at all for Neblime. He is definitely not going to be liking that situation. He's got the Clerics to kind of patch up his Phalanxes, but he can, you know, just try to do a contain here. That's pretty much the extent of it. That Treasury did get finished. There is a Maverick over here, but, you know, not really a whole lot going on there. More Phalanxes on the way. Looking eerily familiar to a game I played against Newt earlier. There is a Starped coming. I think Neblime's thinking the same thing I was thinking, that, hey, we need drops. Third base coming down. It will be a Ministry. Neblime not interested in braving the other situation. The Cleric, unfortunately, moving forward a little bit, maybe shell-shocked, perhaps, as watching that Maverick die and then getting lobotomized by the mine. We've got a little bit of a creep forward here by the edge of this cliff. I like this from Veeq. They will obviously have even trades. Anybody who's watched TVT and Brood War will know that Phalanxes often do dictate the matchup quite a bit. And as you can see, if there's any vision gotten over here, then at least these Clerics will not be long for this world, unfortunately. Now, there's no explosive damage type or anything in Cosmonarchy, so when you see 60 damage, it deals 60 damage. Now, Mavericks need to take a direct hit for that to actually happen, and look at this. The tank mode Phalanx is coming in just to joust, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, we end up seeing a little bit more aggression coming out from Veeq. You know, he manages to get that Watchdog down at the cost of a lot of his own infantry. Here comes some more Phalanxes to deploy. And look at that. I think that Mason is going to die. Oh, never mind. He finishes it and ducks out of, gets out of dodge just in the nick of time. There's going to be a liftoff on that so that he can go ahead and see what's going on. Meanwhile, Ahmeds have arrived. The Hurakan is colloquially known as Ahmed around here. He's a cool guy. And 2 of them have been scouting around for this treasury that was cheekily heading to 12 o'clock. Yeah, I don't think Neblime's going to let Veeq get away with that. So an interesting sort of situation here. It's like kind of like a slow crawl. There's some pace to this, but also we have the Atlas coming in. Big deal here for Neblime to stretch ahead in the economic lead. His worker count is now ahead of Veeq, so at some point the workers did stop being produced. I think that's probably a deliberate decision by Veeq because he knows that he's kind of capped out on what he can accomplish right now. And he is trying to keep pace with what Neblime is doing. You know, this anchor could have landed at some point. It's kind of occupying a little bit of time here. These Phalanxes are trying to out DPS so many Clerics. That is not the way. and so they will need to fall back and maybe deploy. A lot of shelling happening over here, but at least the vultures are going to get cooked. In the meantime, we have another structure being attempted to be built over here. I don't think that's likely to get very far. When the Atlas finishes, we might see Neblime send off a couple more Masons for the express purpose of... Oh, look at this. The Cleric Ball is going to get evaporated here in a moment, I think. Only one Phalanx is firing on it, so that's actually really, really good for Veeq. Otherwise, he would have just lost every single one of them, and that would have put him down. Even still, it's happening already. So one more shot, and there's going to be some closed casket funerals. The Watchdog is obviously being sniped away. Now the Clerics are going to fall away. Okay, we're maybe getting somewhere. Now, another thing that I've been thinking about for a while, and I've known that I wanted to do this for a long time, is for lifting off and landing, there should probably be some kind of, like, delay, basically. So I think lifting off should probably have, like, a 1-second channel time before it actually becomes an air unit. And then landing, there should probably be a 1-second channel time before it becomes active. And I think that's a pretty big deal in that situation. So we'll see how to make that happen. This Hurakan is watching the treasury land. He knows that, you know, there's probably going to be a quarry attempted to be made there. He even could have waited for that quarry instead of allowing Veeq to, you know, obviously lift it off with no money wasted. There is going to be a madrigal drop fomenting over here, so we got to keep an eye out on the mini-map. But look at this. There's a bunch of mantles coming, a starport in the back. So I think that's going to lend towards some heavier air, maybe even just some Valkyries for anti-air insurance. The first magical drop is away. Second one on the way as well, but it might get caught here. There's actually no anti-air over here besides a couple of Mavericks, so it just kind of awkwardly flies over the middle of the map. I'm not sure Neblime clocked that, but he should know that things are happening here because obviously his vultures are coming alongside. Some watchdogs being assembled here. Hasn't given up the game yet that he has tier 2 available. So there we go. The initial hit is in. And immediately trying to shuffle it backwards. So while it is in that deployed mode, dude, they got nerfed. While they are in that deployed mode, one of them fills up the Trojan. So this is actually a pretty big deal here. Obviously, you know, he's trying to pull away. He is going to end up losing a couple of them. You can even see Veeq trying to do hopscotch with them. This is another thing that I think maybe should probably have like a little bit of a negative hit at some point where like maybe there should be like a weapon cooldown enforced onto it. Look at them. They're coming back over here just to get zapped, just to get bopped at the top here. Now Veeq isn't fast enough to respond to that. He is going to go ahead and try to do that. He's done a lot of economic disruption. You might look at that and say, dude, Neblime still has more workers. And yeah, Veeq didn't kill workers per se, that many workers in that drop, but it did a lot of economic disruption. It tied Neblime up. He had a lot of money. I mean, Veeq has got 6,000 minerals, so okay, maybe there's somebody who has a little bit more money in this scenario, but I definitely feel like that could have been effective if it had been macroed sort of behind and there was more stuff being done, you know, back there. But Veeq is only now starting his Atlas. It's, you know, probably like 12:15, 12:30 when that was started. So that's actually a really big deal. It's behind the minerals over here. And for me, I feel like that's that is a pretty massive deal, honestly. If the fact that he can't really spend his minerals that well because of what he's got, and he has been so choked on resources, you know, that's something you got to time out when you're considering, you know, what to do. I feel like the fact that you can't cap until tier 2 is actually, I think it's a good thing in this situation, because it does mean that if you know, want to really make use of the heavy hitters in tier 1, then you know, like sort of like the 1.5s or whatever, then it comes at the cost of being able to tech up, because otherwise you could just expand, you know, say a lot of minerals or something. Even if it was like 300, 400 minerals for the reservoir, it would still probably be... Here comes a Wraith just to see what's going on. Unfortunately, I don't think it'll get very far. It'll still probably just result in you being able to unlimit your sort of gas chokehold there. And so that would probably allow you to stay on tier 1 a lot longer, which maybe would be fine, but I feel like already, you know, this is a winnable situation for Veeq, even though he's got so many minerals that he's not really able to actuate. And his opponent does have him over a barrel tech-wise. It still feels like you could potentially win here. There's room to play around this area. A mine got planted and then just promptly got pranked. Here's another drop being fomented. He could probably drop it right over here, honestly, but there's some units coming out of these mantles. But if you wanted to just attack this base or whatever, that might be a better target than what he's going for. The pull is already here. See if he can preempt it. Yeah, he's going to see if he can hit the ramp there. Unfortunately, this is also with other structures, so they're going to be like taking him as targets. I do like that that Neblime was like kind of shit talking him, like, you can't do that, dude. This doesn't work anymore. So meanwhile, we're sort of like keeping track of the costs here. Yep, still 8k minerals in the bank. Veeq definitely finding it difficult to keep his money low. Now I'm going to see if he can pull away with that Madrigal. Maybe he'll get a couple of shots off. I don't think he's going to kill another unit, though. And, you know, more economic disruption. It kind of annoys Neblime more than anything. Probably forces him to put down a Sentinel. Remember, Sentinels now cost 50 gas. They didn't when this game was played. So, and at the same time now, the starport has been spotted. There's only one of them. That might give Veeq a nice little sort of like feeling like, okay, well, he's going to go for his casters, but I don't need to like hard commit into anti-air. Meanwhile, captaincy's being started now that tier 2 is done. 5 phalanxes at a time, because that's just how many fulcrums we got going over here. I'm actually looking for the other 2. And I'm not actually seeing them, so... Oh, yeah, of course, they're right there. I don't know why my brain decided that those didn't exist. I wanted to keep the number at 3. And we have a little bit of a mech force being put up over here. There's going to be an unsiege over here. That might have been a little untimely, but, you know, he's going to try to do as much damage as he can in this situation while cleaning... whilst trying to stay alive. He's got no clerics over here. It's just the 2 shamans, so, or 3 shamans. It's not the most efficient option here. But there goes the phalanxes, and it looks like maybe I think Veeq lost 2 phalanxes of his own and a couple vultures, so it's all right. He's obviously had his ministry blocked. Now here come the Durandals. This is... I feel like if this had been synced up with the mech that was at this choke, it could have done a lot of damage. But as it currently stands, I mean, the Durandals, they're going to be able to clean up a decent amount of the Goliaths and the sort of like fodder. They might even get this Phalanx if Neblime isn't careful, or rather Veeq isn't careful. But at this stage, it does... Okay, we've got more reinforcements coming from the south. I still feel like Veeq should be able to step on this relatively easily, but he's actually pulled the Ministry back, so it's going to take him a while to get him back down. And that's a little bit tricky. Looking at over here, we actually have mass guild hall coming. This is, I also think, before a guild hall price increase. So we'll probably see some autocrat spam. This is not going to be as viable on the current live patch. And look at this. A little bit of lax target fire there in that situation, but the Cataphract will finally go down. There's even an Azazel here at the last second. Was probably going to see what it can do. I think the next force is definitely going to cause a bit more trouble now. And Veeq, remember, he's on 3 bases to 5, so he has allowed the game to kind of slip out of his hands. We have phalanxes on the high ground over here. We've got Maverick standing guard over in the middle of the map, although it's not been used by his opponent just yet, so Veeq isn't like at a huge deficit there. It's just like flashbacks to playing against Hamster, I think. Azazel's trying to do their best to keep the Durandals alive, and you know what? I think it might just be enough to flame down these phalanxes. There's not really any deployments or anything. Veeq was trying to flank with some vultures, it looks like, but one of them got lost halfway through. And yeah, okay, so this little 3 o'clock outpost is not really going to get set up at any point. We have Olympians coming. I feel like they might be a little bit too immobile for what Veeq is sort of leveraging them into. They aren't really like, they're not the mobile infantry. If you're going to go for something like that, you probably want like dilettantes or something. But Neblime's at tier 3, and he's putting down 2 nanite assemblies, as well as capping some geysers, actually throwing down 4 reservoirs at once. You know, that's a power move, dude. He's actually only not capped his 3rd so far. He's capping all the other ones at the same time. So kind of goes to show you that Neblime is really loving life right now. He's up by 70-something workers. He's even found a little spot. Veeq has found a little spot. You're not supposed to be able to land there, so that's funny. And I guess maybe we'll increase the size of the Madrigal as a result. It's just to reduce situations like that from happening. Or not. Maybe we'll fix it on the tile side. Now, a diadem being set up at 12 o'clock. This spot was never cleared. It feels like Veeq was probably pressured into taking 3 o'clock precisely because he couldn't really do too much about the spot at 12. And now he's using autocrats to try to get his own Durandals. That will eventually allow him to come over here and see what he can do. He's even combat dropping the madrigals and stuff. Now, the one sort of downside of this is you have to babysit your enemy's units. Or really units in general, because they will decay without the autocrats nearby. And since I was talking earlier about how I was thinking about making the Madrigal attack only air while in its mobile form, I'll spitball another change that I was thinking actually is maybe enemy units would always decay, and allied units would be the ones that wouldn't, and maybe you wouldn't need a nearby reclaimer anymore. You could just resurrect your units and it would be fine for them, and maybe that would be like an interesting balancing act. It does mean that you can't feasibly... Oh, look at that. That poor Madrigal got bopped, and here we go, another hit. I mean, I feel like at this point, Veeq is probably going to have to call it. It's really hard to do much at this situation. He's been pushed into a very very difficult bind. He can't really do too much. I wonder if he feels like he's still in the game somehow. Maybe he just hasn't been able to scout out his opponent. He thinks he's only on like down one base. But there's another one up here. You know, there's a lot of Dominion established by Neblime. This is Neblime's world, ladies and gentlemen. And Veeq is in it. Big mech force coming in. Autocrats doing their best to try to supplement the ranks. But the Diadems are too damn strong. So yeah, we've definitely got some more thoughts and more changes that might be coming. Azazel's charging headfirst into Watchdogs and Madrigals by themselves. Yeah, sorry, you didn't need Diadems killing their own. There's a good defensive matrix option. Why not? Here comes the deployment. And more Diadem hits are incoming. Yeah, there we go. I mean, that's pretty much it. He's rallying out as many units as he can, trying his best to get these Olympians out. His Fulcrums are currently idle. Stepping forward. He's actually doing a surprising amount of damage to this, thanks to the stutter, but there's only so much you can do when you're down so many bases. 12 o'clock obviously drawing more units in thanks to the Diadem. I wonder if maybe units that are hit by a Diadem, or any sort of target, Minotaur's now out as well, just for insult to injury. I wonder if maybe, like, that should be an indication to you that, like, hey, yeah, GG, well played, Veeq will concede the match. Just as, like, a thought experiment, I was thinking, maybe when you are hit from, like, more than, like, 16, 20 weapon range, something ridiculous, maybe you should, like, try to run away, as if you were hit by, like, a unit that you can't retaliate against. Like, if you're a Zealot being attacked by a Mutalisk, you run away if you're idle. Maybe that should be the default assumption if you're hit from super far away, so you don't get dragged in halfway across the map or whatever. An open thought there just to close out that particular match. But we do have one more. Let's take a look. And we are here with Veeq rolling Protoss. So we get a nice little spread of all the different races in this set. Neblime in the top right. Once again, in the average spot that you would normally see him in. For some reason, he's in the top right 2 out of 3 times. You can tell that based on this series. I hope you guys are enjoying the return of Cosmonarchy castovers. One of the things that I feel like I let the foot off the gas there. Not doing castovers for a while. Happy to bring you guys some more. Who's going to win this set? Well, the answer is anybody's guess. And also, the answer is I should probably update the classic overlay. All right, we are all good now. The Gateway coming. I kind of assume that Gateway is just the standard opener now, although I still think that versus Zerg you can make Lattice first work. It's just a wee bit different. We'll have to wait and see. Honestly, I would really not be surprised if there was some very clear like statistical imbalance with some of the openers. That still, despite the fact that I'm thinking maybe there is something like that, I don't think it would be unplayable. I think it would just mean that like one player kind of starts out with or one race in a matchup starts out with a bit of a disadvantage for one reason or another. But I can't know that for sure. And it's sort of like, I always go back to this because when we had Ascension 6, and even like before that, Protoss was kind of spanking Zerg. Zerg was contesting. Shambler was developing a system where he could go, you know, Zeth and so on, into Gateway, like Zeth, Vorv, etc., into a Gateway spam, and Mystery Meat was discovering that he could go Lattice instead. But we didn't really get that like fully cemented until like Sipiak, for example, really hit Veeq hard in the qualification set. We terminated that series on Infinite Velocity 2, where we had this immense macro game, and it just resulted in a crazy amount of back and forth. Now, despite all of me saying that, it's important to note that you know, we don't really know what the matchups are going to be now. It's kind of like a similar situation where we have to figure out these details. Now, Neblime is playing this very much classically Terran versus Protoss. He's gone for the Stockade, couple of Mavericks, Anchor in front as the Ministry is going down. The Dracodon halfway across the map already. Really wouldn't be surprised if we see a more aggressive opener here, but Veeq is already making moves towards his natural expansion, so it looks like this will be a handshake. Now, at the same time, this Dracodon can absolutely cause some havoc. He's forced the stim out already. It's only 2 more shots now to kill that one in the back, and indeed the Anchor does finish. So, in theory, this is a totally fine hold, but remember that Protoss have flash shielding now, so as you can see, as soon as he takes some damage, he can fall back and regenerate the shields. 2 seconds of not taking damage gives you 10 shields regenerated per second. So it does take a little while for the 40 shields of the Dracodon to kick back in. And now that he's got 2 of them, although he seems to have forgotten that, so he's going to have to pull that one back, and he's taking some hull damage as a response. He can absolutely come in here and maybe do some damage, just draw some more Masons. Stockade coming over here to try to support. There's no other infantry or anything, so yeah, we will have a couple of Legionnaires. It looks like this is going to be an attempted bust with the Legionnaires going to come in and maybe pick off the Masons themselves. Now getting able to some free hits on the Stockade. Neblime is just going to be a little bit annoyed about this, but not really anything to write home about too much. It is taxing his economy a little bit since he's got 2 workers not mining, and even worker scenario. We've got a Cyprian coming, heavy, sort of like ranged backline infantry. They got more range than a Maverick, so they can shoot the Dracodons without being retaliated against. And this Fulcrum is complete, but perhaps because of the fact that his economy is a little bit slowed down, he is taking a while to get that Palladium up. Now it is on the way. We'll probably see 2 Mavericks unload at this point, and here comes the Cyprian. He's actually going to unload most of them. There we go. Oh, he loses a Maverick for it, and the other one is actually fairly low HP, so that's a little awkward. We've got 3 Legionnaires, a 3rd Dracodon on the way. This is still bustable, but the longer this goes on, I feel like the easier it will be for Neblime to hold. He does just need the 1 Phalanx out, and then he's pretty much good to go. Very fun, actually. I haven't seen this kind of gameplay on Cosmonarchy before because obviously Palladiums were hitherto gated behind an Atlas, so you wouldn't really see them in action, but they are such an iconic Terran unit that it's nice to have them back. And the Dracodon, Phalanx interaction with anchors and so it's very nostalgic for me as someone who's watched a lot of ASL, someone who's watched a lot of professional StarCraft and amateur StarCraft and stuff. It's just something that you see all the time. Now, speaking of things you see all the time, we do have that Watchdog Scout. We have a Grand Library coming up, actually double Grand Library with one of them already completed. So this is peculiar. Might see like a heavy Amaranth dump or something. Cantavis on the way, so that's the first order of business. Second Phalanx likely coming. Yep, there it is, as well as the 2nd Stockade. So we're not really sure what Neblime is thinking about his composition, but his Watchdog is scouting everything out. We did see some idle scribes earlier. 4 Dracodons poking in, now getting bopped by the Phalanx, and that is their signal to dip set. So Neblime has held all of the early aggro. We have a Quarry coming in the main. We will probably see a Quarry come in the natural at some point as well, but whether we see that before or after the tech up is yet to be determined. Interesting that he's going for double Stockade as opposed to like another Fulcrum for more mech play or something. Got a Vulture coming. Watchdog might have spotted the Cantavis. Hard to know. Also, hard to know what the Cantavis is for. We have no embassy, so we can't have any transports. We've got double Warden in the natural, single Warden in the back line of the main. We do have Amaranths on the way. They are speedy boys now, as well as, of course, being a little bit more durable, a little bit cheaper. Good sense to put down some lobotomy mines. We do have some Hurricanes to try to absorb that early aggro. And hey, Veeq's been a little bit lax with his containment, so the Vulture will slip out. I don't know that it can really do too much, especially with these Wardens coming online. It might be able to park back up here above the geyser and harass some workers and maybe shut down some mining, but I'm not 100% sure. This Watchdog has stayed alive a long time. Neblime must be wondering why he's been allowed to keep this. Now, we do have double Vestry, so I guess this is going to be like Phalanx Cleric. This is an interesting composition here. We do have a pretty low amount of money here from Neblime, and he does have even workers with his opponent. That will slowly stretch ahead until Veeq actually is able to successfully take a 3rd. He's got a Herald coming up, as well as taking that 3rd as we just sort of discussed. So that goes down. The Cantavis is here. I thought maybe the Cantavis was going to be for Hallucinate. Get these anchors to take 1.5 damage instead of 1. Since when you throw the dazing field down, it basically creates phantom projectiles that deal half damage on the same attacker. So like this Dracon would shoot, and then it would shoot again after it hits. Stuff like that. So it's a pretty iconic looking ability. Now the Cantavis keeping in the back line. We are just going to have like a total jump through, but the Legionnaire is doing a great job of absorbing those initial mines. We only saw one of them, remember? And here comes the Cantavis. There's the dazing bolt we were talking about. The anchor absolutely can take a lot of damage here. And if those Phalanxes hit hallucinating units, they're actually going to fire 2 shots, which is going to be double the splash. A Madrigal deploys in the back line. It looks like the Amaranths are going to be cleaned up just fine. Hurricane's being invaluable there. Psystorm to catch the Phalanx at the last second. The Cantavis was not picked apart by the units on the high ground cliff. But it looks like there's going to be just enough to hold this. I say this, more Amaranths are coming. We still have the 1 Hurricane. We've got more Clerics coming as well, but no combat units here. So now the Herald and the Amaranths are going to get on top of the Phalanx. There's not really that much healing for it. So finally the Herald goes down. That's doing a lot to help sustain these Amaranths, and now they're just kind of on their own. But a Great Storm in the backline. That Cantavis being a secret agent and getting a crazy amount of value in the dying dregs of this 8-minute banger. So there you go. We had a fast one to close us out here. Veeq coming out on top of the set, using random to bamboozle his opponent. And Neblime, you know, he's the champion. He played Terran and won everything. Obviously, the game looks very different, and maybe this isn't, you know, your average set because he's trying to figure out what these changes are all about, but cool stuff nonetheless. I'm glad that we got to see some action there from all of the different races and all the different matchups that Terran can fight against, so pretty neat stuff. If you like Cosmonarchy, if you like the look of what you just saw, pop on in, dude. See what happens when you expand your horizons and download Cosmonarchy today.